Today, we will discuss depression and the relationship it has to both diabetes distress and diabetes burnout. When you are diagnosed as a diabetic, it feels like the universe has just handed you another 24-hour job, but with no pay, and you get no vacations from it. If you're going to manage this, it will take a ton of education and constant effort. And depending on the diagnosis, pain, suffering, and sacrifices will be part of the journey. Yes, you see a resilient diabetic in front of you who on the outside looks strong and seems always in control. But let me tell you my true struggles, my mental battles, and distress that I go through on a daily basis. And I will give you a story of what personally happened to me a week ago that caused extreme anxiousness and stress beyond all belief, and how I personally managed it. But before we begin, let me welcome all the resilient diabetics out there. This is where we turn ordinary struggling diabetics into extraordinary well-controlled diabetics. If you don't know who I am and you're brand new to the channel, I welcome you. My name is Sampat and I am an insulin-dependent diabetic diagnosed a little over 5 years ago. So, the proud owner of a pancreas that has gone on a permanent and lifelong vacation. So not only am I diabetic just like you, where we will be walking that walk and talking that talk together, but I do also have a University of Bachelor of Science degree in nutrition dietetics, and that does come in handy in discussing all the intricacies of being a diabetic. The unique information found today will only be found here on The Resilient Diabetic. New, life-changing episodes are released weekly. So if you want to learn more and you want to be notified by YouTube that a new video has been released, the only way to do that is to first hit that subscribe button, followed by that gray notification bell. Otherwise, YouTube would not notify you. And you have to choose turn on all notifications. And of course, if you like what you've learned today, please hit that like button. Studies show that people with diabetes have greater risk of depression than people without diabetes. And there are no easy answers about why this is true. But what I can say is that we as diabetics tend to be really hard on ourselves. When we don't meet our own expectations or goals in a timely manner, it can be very frustrating. As a diabetic, it is almost impossible to do everything right all the time. And even if you do stuff right, your blood sugars have a mind of its own and they can do some crazy things. So don't expect perfection, because perfection is not possible. That is kind of when we give up. Instead, we have to try and cut ourselves some slack. It's okay to strive for perfection, as we all do. Just remember at times that having uncontrollable blood sugars is part of being a diabetic. The stress of daily diabetes management can really build. You may feel alone or set apart from your family, your friends, because of all this extra work we've got to do. If you're facing complications such as nerve damage, loss of eyesight, or you're having trouble keeping your blood sugars level, you may feel like you're losing control of your diabetes. One of the biggest areas of concern for many of us is what your doctors are going to say. Instead of you working alongside your healthcare team, you fear them. This new tension between you, your doctor, and your team may make you feel frustrated and sad, thus skipping appointments and lab work, and we never want that. Depression can get you into a vicious cycle. It can and will block really good diabetes self-care. If you're depressed and you have no energy, chances are you will find these really important self-care tasks such as regular blood sugar testing. Taking a medication is just far too much. And at times you feel anxious that you can't even think straight. And then that changes the way we eat. Then eating the wrong foods just compounds the disease. If you are feeling symptoms of depression, do not keep them to yourself. First, talk them over with your family and your doctor. There may be a physical cause for your depression. Remember, you are not alone. You may want to talk to a psychiatrist, psychologist, psychiatric nurse, licensed clinical social worker, or a professional counselor. Chances are your doctor has a mental health professional on the diabetes treatment team waiting for you. Be open and honest with your doctor. And if you don't like your doctor, he or she's not supportive, helpful, change doctors. You would be surprised. Two different doctors may have two completely different approaches to your care. This is your life we're talking about. What is diabetes distress? Constantly checking blood sugar levels, taking your medications, insulin injections, exercising, hitting the gym, counting, controlling carbs, eliminating carbs, cooking healthy meals. At times, this laundry list of responsibilities may leave us feeling anxious and completely overwhelmed. Because this is on top of our stressful jobs, taking care of our families, feeding our families, let alone our day-to-day responsibilities. Diabetes distress is the emotional response to living with diabetes, the burden of relentless daily self-management, and the prospect of its long-term complications. It can also arise from the social impact of having diabetes, the stigma, the unnecessary comments we all get, having to deal with people and their unhelpful reactions, and their complete lack of understanding. Let's not even begin to discuss the financial implications, the insurance, the treatment costs that we all worry about on a daily basis. These feelings of self-defeat are not rare. According to some research, in any given 18-month period, between a third and a half of people with diabetes will experience diabetes distress. And this is a problem because diabetes distress can then create poor health outcomes, and that could lead to diabetic burnout. Diabetic burnout is a state in which someone with diabetes grows tired of managing their condition, and then they simply ignore it for some period of time, or worse, forever. Unfortunately, diabetes burnout seems very, very common, and for most people with diabetes, they've experienced it at some point in time in their lives. This is especially true for the insulin-dependent type 1 or the type 1.5 LADA diabetics such as myself. You have to be on alert 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and as much as we would like, there are no breaks. People who experience diabetic burnout are not necessarily depressed, and are definitely not lazy. In fact, what I see in almost all cases with someone with diabetes is that even though they're experiencing burnout, they still want to live a long, healthy life. What does diabetic burnout actually look like? Well, it may be different in different people, but there are some common signs and symptoms, and these include strong negative feelings, overwhelmed, anger, frustration, feeling controlled by diabetes, isolation, feeling completely alone, avoidance of some or all diabetic management activities, and being unmotivated to change the behavior. With diabetes, isolation is one of the biggest risk factors for becoming burnt out. If you feel that nobody understands what you're experiencing, or that you're the only person with diabetes that feels that way, life with diabetes can be a very, very lonely place. Whilst feeling supported does not make this crazy disease go away, it can make it easier to live with. Getting support, encouragement, empathy from others can be a critical part in staying motivated to managing our diabetes. Sometimes the people in your life may not know what kind of support you need. Be clear of what will be most helpful and what you don't want them to do. Remember, there are other people with diabetes who can be a great source of understanding. Seek out those online support forums. So what happened to me in the last 2 weeks that was a great example? Well, my cousin got married and there were over 10 extravagant, incredibly beautiful events planned out leading up to the actual wedding. How much anxiety does an event like that cause for an insulin-dependent diabetic? It's a 10 out of 10. In order to protect myself, I had to explain to my extended family I could only attend 3 of them. I was honest and very, very upfront. The toll it would take on my body would be insurmountable. Each event would start very late in the evening, and I would still have to be up at 4 o'clock every single morning. And I would love to have just taken a few days off away from the business, but that is just not possible right now. It is a 7-day-a-week relentless business with no days off with rest. And I have discussed sleep and what happens to the diabetic body when sleep is compromised. I personally have to deal with much higher blood sugar levels the following days I get little sleep, which makes me feel horrific. The second issue I faced, the food or dinner served at each event would not only be very, very late at night, but it would not be very diabetic friendly. My cousin's family is exclusively vegetarian. The veggies, if picked properly, were not the issue. Everything for the events were either going to be deep fried or cooked in very, very heavy polyunsaturated cooking oils that just compound my resistance exponentially. And we've already discussed that too. And that would add to the roller coaster of blood sugars, creating even greater swings and greater inability to control blood sugars. So what did I do? Well, on one of the 3 events, I actually had to bring my own dinner. Went back to my car during the event, took my insulin, and ate my dinner early in the car. Then I had to leave at a reasonable time. It hurt me knowing my wife and my son were at all the events without me. I was missing out on family I had not seen in decades that flew in from all over the world. That feeling of isolation and guilt is real. This extrovert, prior to being diagnosed, has become very introverted at times. But for good reasons. You have to put your foot down and protect yourself at times. I knew what I did was not only in my short-term interest, but my long-term interest. The 2 back-to-back nights I did attend did take its toll on me, and I was prepared for that. The final night of the wedding, dinner was served after 10 p.m., and I tried to eat as best as I could, but I still ended up with blood sugars in the low 300s, and I had not seen numbers like that in over 3 years. What was worse for me were my next morning numbers a few hours after going to bed. Even after a heavy correction bolus the night prior, I was still in the high 200s, feeling nauseous and completely drained for the next few days. I continued to struggle with my morning blood sugars for a good 4 to 5 days after the main wedding before my body settled back into a groove and it unwinded all the resistance that was created. So how do we resolve the issues of feeling depressed or getting burnt out? One of the most important components is the family and the direct support around you. Some have family that care. They want you healthy. They'll do everything in their power to help, from the right foods in the house to making sure that wherever you go, there is some sort of diabetic-friendly foods available for you. And for others, and I see this a lot on the diabetic forums, you have no support. Family who do not understand the ramifications of uncontrolled diabetes. They undermine everything you do, from bringing home the wrong foods, which we know makes us miserable and even more anxious, to blaming you, to not understanding the true needs and complexities of the disease. So it's really up to you to try your best to educate them, and you've got to lead by example. Second, for many diabetics, simply taking things one step at a time can be really helpful. Rather than tackling a new exercise routine, a new diet plan, a new glucose monitoring system, new medications all at once, focus on one change at a time that you can control. Make those changes slowly so that you do not get discouraged. Results do not come quickly for some. Think of diabetes like a lifelong marathon, not a 10-second sprint. Staying motivated means accepting that you do not have to be perfect managing diabetes. What I've come to peace with is to allow myself that occasional blood sugar fluctuations, and that relieves some of the stress associated with trying to achieve perfection, which we all know is not possible. Robert H. Schuller said it best: tough times never last, but tough people do. No matter how tough things get, remember you have the potential for greatness. That is why we are called the resilient diabetics. I'll create a playlist for you with many other related videos on diabetes. The episode LADA Diabetes Type 1.5 will cover some life-altering questions. What kind of diabetes are you really living with? Do you quantitatively know? How do you know? I will present you with a few tests you may have never heard of before, and they may be the single most important test done for diabetes. The keto diet. It seems to be all the rage right now. Do you know what it is? Can this restrictive diet be used by diabetics safely and for life? What are the true ramifications and limits of this diet? Are there better ways to control insulin and blood sugars without going to such extremes? If you're on a desktop or laptop, use your mouse to click that box. If you're on your mobile device, tap that with your fingers. So, have a great and productive day, and we will see you soon with another episode, which I've said are always released weekly. Bye for now.